We are now reconvening our open session at 7:10 p.m. And we do not have to do the normal stuff because we did that earlier. So before we go any further, I'd like to thank Rod Waddell again for being here to help us with the broadcast on Channel 20. Rod, always appreciate you being here. So we'll move right into recognition and celebration of outstanding contributions of our students and staff. Mr. Earl Dotson Jr., you're up.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, board members. We are excited tonight to celebrate some outstanding student athletes and some of their remarkable accomplishments at the state level. First up, we have IESA cross country. Flynn Middle School's Michelle Gasman won the IESA Class 3A cross country sectional and qualified for the state meet. The 7th grader competed in the IESA state meet and took 9th place with a race time of 11 minutes and 44.4 seconds. Let's give it up for Michelle Gasman.
Great watching you run.
Great job.
Nice job.
Okay.
All right, so get ready. There's going to be a lot of standing up. So here we go.
Okay.
Eisenhower's Carson Dennis and Jackson Durso, and Lincoln's Miles Lang also represented RPS 205 at the Class 3A State Cross Country Sectional. Let's give it up for Carson Dennis, Jackson Durso, and Lincoln Miles Lang.
Great job. Congratulations.
Great work. Nice job.
Wonderful job. Congratulations.
Nice job.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The Thurgood Marshall School's boys cross country team won the Class 2A sectional to qualify for the state meet. The team took 12th place at the state level. Marshall's Jack Bonavia took 9th at the state level with a race time of 10 minutes and 47.8 seconds. The team includes Jack Bonavia, Nolan Bronze, Jack Carlson, Alex Ferry, Ethan Horn, Jackson Jarrett, Sawyer Johnson, Noah Nelson, Caleb Sales, and Alex Worry. Let's give it up for the Thurgood Marshall boys cross country.
Congratulations. Great job, you guys. Congratulations. Well done. Well done. Great job.
Nice job.
Okay.
Aaron's spitting image.
Okay, just looks just like him. Huh? He can't deny that. Okay.
So funny how you
All right. We have the Thurgood Marshall girls in the house too.
All right.
Yeah. The Thurgood Marshall girls cross country team took 3rd place at the Class 2A sectional to qualify for the state meet. The team includes Sarah Battaglia, Cassandra Carpenter, Ekaterina Dimitrivia, Michaela Durkin, Lily Esperanza, Gabrielle Foreman, Ella Hill, Ursula Koch, Sydney Turner, and Kristen Worry. Let's give it up for the Thurgood Marshall girls cross country team.
Congratulations, girls rock. All right, congratulations. Congratulations. Great job. Great job.
Thank you.
The IESA golf. We're on the golf now. Next up, we have the Thurgood Marshall Schools. Cooper Watt took first place at the IESA Boys Sectional A at Ingersoll Golf Course. He shot a 69. Ken, what do you think about that?
Yikes.
At sectional to qualify for the state tournament. From there, the 7th grader tied for 5th place in the IESA state golf tournament. Marshall's Nolan Braun shot an 81 and took 6th at sectionals, which also led him to the state tournament. Let's give it up for these golfers.
All right.
Cooper Watt and Nolan Braun.
I shot a 69. Earl, I shot a 69, but I wasn't done yet. Okay, all right, okay.
In IESA girls golf play, Eisenhower Middle School's Kayla Saline took 6th place at the IESA girls sectional A. At the state competition, the 7th grader took 12th place. Let's give it up for Kayla. Is Kayla here? All right, Kayla.
Great job. Very proud of you. Congratulations. Okay.
Lincoln Middle School 6th grader Isabella Peterson took 4th at the IESA girls sectional A. From there, Isabella took 2nd place in the state tournament, and she is only in 6th grade.
Okay.
Let's give it up for Isabella. Isabella?
Yeah. Madison's little sister. Way to go. Very proud of you.
Congratulations.
Wow, see you again next year.
Okay. Just like her sister. Her sister won this thing.
Awesome, awesome. All right, next up, the District Marching Band. The RPS 205 Marching Band performed their first ever state level competition in October. They competed in the 52nd Annual State of Illinois Invitational High School Marching Band Championship at Illinois State University. The band took 7th in their class. We are looking forward to more competitions and hearing more success from these talented students. Let's give it up for the District Marching Band.
All right. Congratulations, well done.
Congrats.
Way to go, congratulations.
Viking, oh, what a nice big picture.
Congratulations. Well done.
Auburn and school. What a great mix. And wow,
All right.
All right, IHSA Girls Golf. The Rockford Co-op won its 3rd Nick 10 Girls Golf title in 4 years. This fall, 2 players qualified to represent Rockford Public Schools at the IHSA State Tournament. Congratulations to East High School's Madison Peterson and Guilford High School's Kristen Saline. Let's give it up for these girls golfers. Welcome to the family.
Very proud of you. Congratulations.
All right, IHSA Girls Tennis. Girls rocking it tonight. Guilford High School's Nicole Christensen finished 3rd at the IHSA Class 2A sectional in October. She advanced to the state level for her 4th straight state tournament, where she was ultimately defeated in the consolation bracket. Let's give it up for Nicole Christensen. Is Nicole here? Auburn High School's Balin Navenhoven won the IHSA Class 2A sectional to advance to state level play. She won her first 2 matches at the IHSA state tournament and was defeated in her 3rd match the next day. She made a strong return, winning her 4th and 5th matches. The freshman was ultimately defeated in the quarterfinals of the consolation bracket. She finished the season 25-2, and we're looking forward to her bright future with Auburn tennis. Let's give it up for Balin Navenhoven.
Great job.
Lastly, we want to say again, congratulations to all these students on their success, and thank you to their parents, teachers, friends, and family for supporting these students and their achievements. So let's give it up for parents, teachers, friends, and family, coaches. Congratulations. Woo! Parents. Oh, Lori is mouthing, and the principals. Principals.
Okay, oh, yeah.
Thank you, sir. That is all.
Very exciting, and I've said it before, this is the best part about being on this board is hearing about all the accomplishments of our terrific students and the staff that helped them along the way. So thank you all for being here. We are now at the Petitions and Communications portions of our meeting when we invite the public to make comments. The First Amendment of the United States Constitution guarantees the rights of citizens to petition their government, as well as provides for freedom of speech. Also, the Illinois School Code requires that there be a time at regular and special meetings for public comment. Thus, we are following those mandates during this Petitions and Communications portion of our agenda. According to Board Policy 2.230, the public comments portion of the meeting is limited to a total of 30 minutes. The board will not respond to comments at this time. If it's appropriate, you'll be contacted in a timely manner by staff in response to your questions. In order to allow sufficient time for the business of the board and to conduct our meeting in an efficient and effective manner, we are requesting that you comply with the guidelines that are posted, and each speaker will be allowed no more than 2 minutes to address the board. It's not appropriate to address individual board members or individual administrators or discuss matters that would otherwise be confidential in such open meetings. I will call 2 names. We just have 2 speakers tonight. When you're the second person, please sit toward the front. You have a clock on the wall to help you with your timing. We appreciate your interest and your cooperation with our guidelines. So our first speaker tonight is Ricky Naylor, to be followed by Reverend Derek Shelby. Mr. Naylor? Thank you for being here. You have to push the button. There you go, sir. Okay.
All right, tonight I'm going to be kind of nice to you guys tonight. The only concern I got was you guys always say about, you want to talk things out. I mean, I sent a couple of emails out to a couple of these staff here from HR and, the superintendent's office about, some hiring things that was going on, and I didn't get no response back. So I'm wondering now maybe they hear what I'm saying now. Maybe tomorrow they'll get around to responding to what I'm saying or to my questions. I mean, you just can't just you want to answer softball questions, you want to answer hard questions. Even like now, when was the last, I want to know, like I said, I don't know, when was the last time these guys have made a key minority hiring? I don't know. So I know it's been a long time. So that's another thing. And to me, I think it's time with this hiring process to make it more open and fair that before these guys hire somebody, you need to ask these guys, okay, how many minority candidates you interview before you guys sign up for and just say they'll just come down and say, okay, here this person's stuff is, and then the board will approve it and say, well, hold up, wait a minute. How many African Americans you interviewed before you made your decision to hire this person? And at the same time, my other concern is leadership. Now, where I come from, the leadership starts up here, not down in these classrooms, not with these kids. So I'm thinking just it was a school district in Kentucky. You got the same problem. The media attacked that school to say, you know what? These schools are nothing but a dropout factory. Instead of these guys getting mad and arguing back with everybody, say, you know what, these guys are right. What do we need to do to fix these schools? You guys had a 5-year plan, nothing really happened. They had a 5-year plan, turned their schools around because they still debating about this stuff. They got down to business and turned those schools around. So let's do the same thing here. If you guys want to be compared to Chicago, Baltimore, these other bad school districts, then do something different.
Okay, thank you, sir. Reverend Derek Shelby.
Revelations chapter 2, verse 2. And Jesus said, I know thy works. Jesus said, I know thy works. Segregation, y'all, to resegregate is race. It ain't got nothing to do with business. It ain't got nothing to do with tourism. It ain't got nothing to do with zones or neighborhood schools. Segregation is race. Has always been race, and that's what it is now. The Lord knows who was in the meetings, what you said, your heart. He knows everything what happened. He knows your works. He knows who was there. He knows the decisions you made to segregate the black people from the black kids from the white. He knows what you're doing. He knows that all the black males that you're destroying. You sit up here and watch all these kids running around here. You don't see no black males. None. Segregation is race. In America, they've been to court over and over in this country, all over this country, to deal with segregation. It has never been something good, ever. And they're going to tell me they're going to segregate the schools so the kids can go to neighborhood schools. Segregation is race. It ain't got nothing to do with schools. It has to do with destroying young black kids, especially the males. Especially the males. 5 years in a row, he kicked out more black males than anybody else in the school district. Segregation. 5 years in a row. 5 years in a row, y'all. Kicked out more black males. Listen. Than all the other males and females of every race combined. Segregated the schools on purpose. The Lord know your works. He know who was there. He know what you said. He know what you did. And it ain't worth going to hell for.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
the Lord Jesus for his blood.
Thank you, sir. I'll ask if there are any board member comments at this time. Mr. Connor.
Well, I know this won't be a circus, so I have my patriotic tie on, my flag tie, and that's because twice a year we honor our veterans. We just had it this last Saturday. So I'd like to say thank you to all the veterans for their service. And if I could call out, Mr. Rollins is a veteran, thank you. Mr. Dotson Jr. is a veteran, thank you. And for all those that are veterans, thank you very much. And we appreciate your service.
Any other board member comments at this time? I would just like to add that we are doing a groundbreaking tomorrow and invite the public and all that want to come to the Kishwaukee neighborhood, South 3rd Street and Caitlin Avenue, somewhere in there. At 1 o'clock tomorrow, we'll be breaking ground for the new school to replace the existing Kishwaukee school, and that will combine students from Nelson, Kishwaukee, and part of Byer. So that's at 1 o'clock tomorrow. So, any other? Mr. Rollins.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I went to a breakfast meeting at the Stockholm Inn this morning and drove by Lincoln and was happy to see that all of the houses that we purchased as part of the facility plan have been knocked down. If you drive by it, it looks a lot different. It's kind of it's exciting to see. It's kind of an example also of things happen, but sometimes they take a while. I can remember that in our first facilities plan, one of the first meetings I went to was at a PTO meeting at Lincoln, and we were discussing what that school needed, and the principal at the time said, we need green space. They were the only middle school that didn't have any green space, didn't even have enough room for a soccer field, and that would have been in like 2011 or early 2012. So we listened, the administration listened, and the board listened. It may have taken 6 years, but we're actually doing it, and hopefully, I'm told by Mr. Schmidt that there's going to be room there for both a football field and a soccer field, so that's kind of exciting to see.
Okay. Any others? If not, we'll now move on to our consent portion of the agenda, including the following consent items. The meeting minutes from October 24th, 2017, the payroll, accounts payable, purchase orders, contracts under 10,000, construction bid requests logged and travel, the bid recommendation for snow and ice removal, the recurring contracts for certified speech and language pathologists, the recurring contract for Ingenuity for professional development services, the recurring contract for professional development services with Reading Horizons, and the other consent items, including the Freedom Information Log. Is there a motion and a second to approve these consent items?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor.
Second.
Second by Mr. Rollins. Any items that board members wish to have pulled for separate consideration? Mr. Escobedo.
10A.
10A, okay. Any others? If not, I'll have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of the items not pulled.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Escobedo,
Yes.
Mr. Rollins,
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano,
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch.
Yes.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
The motion passes with 6 yeses, 1 absent.
I'll now take a motion and a second for the approval of item 10A, which is the meeting minutes from October 24th.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor,
Second.
second by Mr. Rollins. Any questions or discussions? Now I'll have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of item 10A.
Mr. Escobedo,
Abstain.
Mr. Rollins,
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano.
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch,
Yes.
Mr. Siegel,
Yes.
Mr. Connor.
Yes.
The motion passes with 5 yeses, 1 abstain, 1 absent.
Thank you. We are now on to the closed session consent agenda items, including the following. The appointment of Laura Blackwell as a 10-month assistant principal K through 8th grade. That's a Barber. The appointment of Dr. Janelle Moroz as a 10-month special ed administrator. The appointment of Michael Noble as a 10-month special ed administrator. The appointment of Sarah Jeske as a 12-month human resource director. The notice to remedy for Mrs. Garnhart. The HR organizational report and addendum. And the closed session consent items for student discipline, unless otherwise modified below. The board adopts and accepts the hearing officer's findings and recommendations in the following cases in which students expelled or suspended are prohibited from being on school grounds and school-sponsored activities without the prior written permission of the principal. Student 4113 is expelled for the remainder of this school year. Student 4116 is expelled for the remainder of this school year and the first semester of next school year. The expulsion for student 4117 is held in abeyance upon an EIA agreement through the remainder of this school year and the first semester of next school year. The expulsion for student 2021 is held in abeyance contingent upon an EIA agreement for the remainder of this year and the first trimester of next school year, as well as the following closed consent items, including these student EIAs. Student 3352, 3356, 3359, 3360, 3361, 3362, 3363, 3364, 3365, 3366, 67, 3368, 3369, 3370, 3371, 3372, 3373, 3374, and student 3375. Is there a motion and a second to approve these closed session consent items?
So moved.
Moved by
Second.
Mr. Connor, second by Mr. Siegel. Are there any items that board members wish to have pulled for separate consideration? Seeing none, I'll have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of the closed session consent items.
Mr. Rollins,
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano,
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch.
Yes.
Mr. Siegel,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Escobedo.
Yes.
The motion passes with 6 yeses, 1 absent.
Thank you. We're now on to our next agenda item, which is the superintendent's report. Dr. Jarrett.
I'd like to cede my time to Mrs. Detman to talk a little bit about an item you received in the superintendent's weekly update as it pertains to some pretty significant curriculum changes. I want to have this be a pretty brief preview and encourage everyone to attend Mrs. McCulloch's Education Committee meeting where we're going to go into a little bit more detail, but I do want to expose the whole board to this because, I think these are important changes, and it's something that while we're not seeking formal approval, you may get questions and things like that that come along because this is pretty significant curriculum change, and I think it's going to be positive for our students.
Sure. So as I mentioned earlier, we are headed down the path of ensuring grade-level rigorous curriculum, and our underlying philosophy is all standards, all students. And so in order to reach that with our new sets of standards in the C3 framework, the next generation science standards, and of course the Common Core for math, we need to redesign our course sequence. And what that means is that we are going to be integrating some key concepts that have traditionally been siloed and therefore presented a learning challenge for most students. So you'll hear more at the Ed Committee November 21st. We'll do a full presentation on our move toward integrated math, integrated science, and also an integrated course in 9th grade social studies called Global Studies.
Questions for Ms. Stepman? Okay. Looking forward to those changes. Okay. And the further discussion at Ed Committee, which will be the 21st, right, isn't it?
It is.
All right.
Are you done with your report?
Yeah.
We have not met Ed Committee, but we're going to be here the 21st. For board members who are interested in a little bit more depth on the multi-classroom, the innovation zone.
Okay.
We'll be discussing that as well as those changes. Mr. Vosberg, is there anything else on that agenda?
He's thinking.
I'm thinking, yeah.
Okay.
No, I think that's it.
Okay. So we'll look forward to that. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Finance Committee report, Mr. Rollins.
Finance Committee has not met since the last board meeting. Our next meeting will be here in this room on Monday, December 4th at 5:30 p.m.
Okay. And Mr. Connor.
Operations met in this room on Tuesday, November 7th. It actually was a relatively full agenda. The recommendation for mechanical and electrical engineering services for West Middle School came up and was discussed. The West Middle School piping study was also discussed. The one comment that the committee discussed, I think, at some relative length, was the likely cost of the piping replacements at West. Could be in the neighborhood of a couple $1 million, and there was some question on old buildings, and was it the best thing for us to be putting money into it? I think the other part was, we're not 100% sure why we're having the problem at West, and for example, not at East, since they really have kind of the same layout. Obviously, they had different contractors, and there's other environmental conditions, but that was discussed. So I think one of the things that's going to come to the board for us to really think about is how much do we want to put in on this, and what's our plan for the long term. I did reiterate at that meeting that we have committed to West as a facility through the end of our current facilities plan, which is 5 years out. So unless something happens, I would say that we're on track to be committed to the buildings. However, there are some questions again about cost. So that item really did come up and was discussed. Another item that was discussed at some length is the custodial contract, and really what I would consider the status of operations in the schools. My observation is that we do have some ongoing issues. I think, to be fair, as a reminder to everyone, we said at the beginning of this process that this would take some transition and not be necessarily an easy transition, but there are outstanding issues, and so I think that some numbers were reported, they were published out on the website, and I think what we're going to do is make sure that at every meeting we do have a status on what's going on. We had feedback from principals from the buildings, from the building representatives on the union side. We did have at that meeting, and do here tonight, we have representation from Aramark. So they were there at the operations committee and have committed, thank you, to attend that and be available for questions. So one of the things that I've asked the administration to do is have some questions in advance ready for the operations committee, so that Aramark can be prepared to answer those in addition to the standard reporting, which I assume that would be shared. What I would say is that with all the discussion, that clearly there are some concerns, and so one of the items we'd like to make sure is that there is progress being made both in terms of remediation, whether it's staffing or equipment, and any outstanding issues between the parties. The next is we talked about the closed school demolition update, which I thought actually was quite well done, and I think the committee responded quite well. There's an actual plan, a multi-year plan. Again, that was published if you want to see the details, but it was, I thought, very good to see that plan being published, the agreement, and the good work that's being done with our partners such as the Park District. So I think everybody was pleased with how that came about. Another item was the building naming committee update. There are 2 dates right now that hopefully have not changed, where we are going to have public meetings. There have been petitions submitted for both new schools now, and we will go over both the process and the suggested names and have this community meeting. And one is for November the 29th at Flynn at 6:30. The other is on November 30th at 6:30, and that will be here, third floor in the administration building. Those are open to the public. The one at Flynn is going to be regarding school number 1, which is physically out in Cherry Valley and is the replacement for Thompson, White Swan, in Cherry Valley. And then the one on the other night, on the 30th, is for new school number 2, which will replace Kishwaukee and Nelson schools. There was also a fall housing report that came out, which there's more detail and an update coming about, so that will be forthcoming. But in general, what I would say is my interpretation is the numbers in the school district are relatively flat. And interestingly enough, they're slightly down in kindergarten and slightly up in the secondary schools, which is kind of interesting if you think about it. There has been some remediation of the imbalances on numbers from the prior year, particularly East and Flynn, I think, are 2. So there has been some work and some adjustment of the boundaries to make sure that the numbers across those schools balance out. So that was given, and that, again, was published, and there's another update coming. For the facilities master plan, I think the good news from my point of view is we have already finished 75% of the work and paid it out. I think that's quite an accomplishment in 5 years. So again, really kudos to the administration and staff that are working on that and our partners out in the community, because I think that's a real accomplishment. As, if I might say so, at a high level, we're both under budget and on schedule. And go ahead, name the other institutions, no offense, where that's true. Also, it looks as though within roughly the next 9 to 12 months, we have committed dollars of another 17% that's going to be done. So if you total it up, we're at virtually 90% done in roughly a year. So again, same comment. So that was good news. There was one other update. Oh, yes, and at Kishwaukee, I almost forgot, there's only 3 outstanding properties that need to be dealt with. And so I know there's been great progress, both in terms of the demolition schedule, and we have one outstanding that is right in the middle of one of the businesses. So that progress is really good. The last item is there's essentially an auction of some land out at Jefferson, and an appraisal has been put forth and being worked on by administration. I would anticipate, hopefully, that coming to December operations, which means probably first reading in December's board meeting and then the second reading in January. Sorry, that's a lot. I don't know if there's any questions, but.
Any questions for Mr. Connor? Mrs. McCullough.
Yeah, so just a little bit of insight for myself, and I don't know about other board members, about this school naming committee, because we really don't have a, I don't know what happened with the development of the committee, and I was wondering if because Cherry Valley one would be in your district, so I'm assuming you're on the committee. But I know that the other school will be in Mr. Rollins's. Will he be on that committee, or will he be able to participate?
Anybody could participate, so let me be clear on this. There's no set process through the
Right, so I was
policy.
just wondered if what you did.
So what we did is, the approach was, it didn't matter, frankly, that it was in my district. I'm doing this as the head of ops, and I thought that it made sense to ask Mr. Siegel, but it doesn't prevent any board member from being a part of it. The whole purpose of the community involvement, and the way it was done is, we have representation across the PTOs, the principals, some at-large community members, and then the two of us, but it's not like that, there's a binding vote on that. It's like anything else, it's a recommendation. So we have the two meetings, and we will have a committee meeting, so anybody can really go from that standpoint.
Mrs. Hoadley has a
Yeah,
comment.
just to clarify, it really is a superintendent-constituted committee, so it doesn't fall under the Open Meetings Act. So if a third board member participates, let us know if you intend on going so that we can issue the appropriate notice.
Okay.
Since it's not a board-constituted committee.
Okay.
Understood.
For the Open Meetings Act.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, any other questions for Mr. Connor? All right, thank you. Ms. McCulloch, you had another one? Okay. We are now on to action items, and the first question I have is, do you want to do 19A, B, and C all one, or do you want to do them separately? You want to do them all together? Okay, all right. So I'll take a motion and a second to approve items 19A, B, and C, which are the real estate purchases for 709 Kishwaukee Street, 717 Kishwaukee Street, and 815 Kishwaukee Street.
So moved.
Second.
Second by Mr. Rollins. Any questions or discussion? Now I'll have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of the action items 19A, B, and C.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Escobedo?
Yes.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
The motion passes with 6 yeses, 1 absent.
Thank you. Our next action item is the resolution for authorization of eminent domain at 720 South 3rd Street. This is for school building number 2. Mr. Schmidt presented this last board meeting. Is there a motion and a second to approve that?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor.
Second.
Second by Mr. Siegel. Any questions or discussion? None, I'll have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of item 19D.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Escobedo?
Yes.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
The motion passes with 6 yeses, 1 absent.
Okay, we are now on to new business. Mr. Schmidt and Dr. Salsis are going to present our next item, which is the Barber School facility adjustments.
So, thank you. So, this is about a year in the making. About a year ago, during allocations time and when preparing for Ed Committee, looking at basically running out of space for the two-way language immersion, a very successful program at Barber School. Historical trends were to kind of fill it a little heavily at the younger grades, and there would be a drop-off of students leaving for a more traditional middle school experience. With some continuity in leadership, a new strategic plan, some better PR and marketing, there has been a trend of students staying for middle school, improved sports and electives, et cetera. So several different options were discussed at the time, the possibility of going down to 3-strand, which was the initial proposal to do that at the K level and roll that up to alleviate the space issue, which completely contradicted a large portion of the strategic plan that many stakeholders had worked on for Barber, which again is a very popular and successful special program. So through a whole series of problem solving, board members were involved, staff members were involved, and back and forth, and a lot of creative work on the teachers' part and concessions they made. Mr. Robinette's very creative scheduling, many hours of creative scheduling to make it work with allocations and physical space in the building for electives. We presented a plan at Ops Committee, knowing that we would come back in the fall to present it before full board. There were some minor facilities adjustments that took place over the summer to alleviate this year's space issue, allowed us to offer a fourth strand of kindergarten. A classroom was created at minimal cost. The teachers agreed to give up their teacher lounge, to move the art room to that space so that a classroom could be freed up upstairs. But we knew that we would have to make a little bit more permanent adjustment to the facility in order to accommodate moving forward so that we could keep the great students and continue to build the program. So I won't read the whole report to you. You've already looked at it, but you can see the fiscal impact, working with Mr. Schmidt and Mr. Robinette to come up with the proposal to create 2 new classrooms. Basically, it involves knocking down some walls in a couple of spots so that we can create 2 new classrooms for students. And I guess I would hope to plant the seed in the back of the mind of the board members that a few years down the road, it would be nice to have Barber considered as part of a bigger facilities plan when it's time to do that for the district, because we're going to keep growing it and making it better. I don't know if you have any questions, or do you want to add anything?
Mr. Connor.
First of all, this came before Ops, but having worked with them along with Mr. Escobedo, I would say it was a great process. Really appreciate the involvement and the passion of the teachers. There was a lot of flexibility. Likewise, on the administration side, I think there were a lot of details here that I'm sure were time-consuming. So I really want to give credit to the administration side, including the principal, who really, I think, helped facilitate this. And if I might say so, to Mrs. Saltis, that, a good job on the program side and us keeping our sight on the fact that the language immersion at Barber has been really successful, and we're really trying to meet the needs of the community and being flexible. So I think this is a really great thing, and thank you all for, from my point of view, really good job.
Thank you.
Ms. McCullough.
So this particular change to the building, and I see the fiscal component is 100,000, will allow you to maintain 4 strands in your building?
And indefinitely in a very crowded way, but yes. And I'll let James, if you have any.
So the big thing is with the 4 strands, that's going to be K through 5. Classroom sizes are a little bit larger in middle school, so then that'll go down to 3 strands. With this extra classroom and knocking out a wall in the 1 5th grade room to allow some extra space, we'll be able to sustain it until we make decisions to raise class sizes possibly further down the road.
I mean, I don't want us to add 2, and then you're coming back next time and saying, well, now they're rolling up, we need more. So this is...
This could solve a problem for many years.
How many years did you, share how many years you planned out? I think it was a 5 or 6 year
Yeah, 2020 I think I went out to.
trajectory.
So one of the things that my involvement was to really steer towards, and Mr. Robinette and Dr. Saltis and the team did a really good job with the faculty problem solving, and but I've made it pretty clear with the faculty that this needed to get us to consideration for a future facilities plan, which we target, if there is one, it being 2022 or 2023. So they really did answer that charge and have been very creative to bridge that gap. I think what we've been clear with is once a new facility plan, if we can get into the pattern, which is my recommendation as a superintendent, where we're continually doing 10-year facility plans, at that point this could be addressed, but this should get us to that point.
Are your elementary class sizes, they're on target with the contract, correct? They're not smaller like we have at Montessori. So the cost for the program is not,
No.
Greater per pupil. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Escobedo?
Yeah, so I think, again, kudos, credit to everyone at the building level, because it seems like, you guys had thought about the issues, the solutions, and, had a plan, well thought out. So, and even it's people coming together to create the solutions. So to me, that was amazing. I thought it was great. But I know that you had alluded that this being a sought-after program. Can you elaborate a little bit as far as the enrollment list or wait list, or
I can elaborate a little. I don't have the exact numbers on the wait list right now. I do know we're in the process of testing. In general, last year is the first year that we were able to hold a lottery for both Spanish and English speakers at the kindergarten level. And so we had immediate seats filled when we opened up that fourth strand. And then we had 10 other students who had expressed interest, had been assessed, whose parents had attended the orientation on the English-speaking list, and a couple of more on the Spanish-speaking list. I don't know if you're all aware, students are assessed for which they're, whether they're orally fluent in English or Spanish, so that the composition is half and half for kindergarten. So they can be appropriate models for each other. So we have a wait list, or an interest list, I don't know, is it 40 or 60 long?
More than that, about 60.
They're working of people who are interested, and the process, once you have an interest list, is students have to be assessed. If you're past K1, you have to assess in both languages, because by that time, so much of the day is in two languages, it wouldn't be appropriate for you to join. So we have a pretty good interest list, and again, it was the first year we were able to have a lottery. So we had a lot of anxious parents waiting to get in, and as soon as we opened up the fourth classroom, that was immediately filled with continued wait list and interest list. So we're following the same pattern that Montessori, and then hopefully Haskell STEAM Academy will also follow with similar deadlines and similar process.
What's the timeline, Mr. Schmidt, on the,
So total enrollment's up over 100 students in the last 5 years.
And
So I don't know if that
I
helps.
think I have a question for Mr. Schmidt. What's the timeline on the construction, and when would that be done?
We'll look at doing this as soon as school's out.
Okay.
We'll start doing the demolition out there. We plan on doing some painting as part of the capital plan anyway, so if we go in there and start ripping out the walls and reconstructing it, we'll have it done probably the end of July,
Okay.
first part of our
So it'll be
August.
ready for the start of next
Yes,
school year?
it's just, it'd basically be this, these four little offices the size of a standard classroom, so
Okay.
demolition is the biggest issue.
Okay, Ms. McCullough?
You have the numbers there, so it's up 105 years. What grade levels are we up in?
Excuse me. Oh, no.
I can tell you right now, our middle school has gone from 2 strands up to 3 strands in the past 2 years. And
That's what I heard you say. That's why I was asking him for the numbers.
It was back in FY11, it was 582 kids, and slowly has steadily went up to 635, 658, 654, and then the grade levels are, well, I'd have it on several reports, so I can't really, I can send you the sheet to show you over the grade levels for each of that.
Are your elementary grade levels staying full as well? I mean, if you have attrition there, as you said, you can't bring in new students who aren't bilingual in
Yeah, and
certain
If you look back from, for the Barber for the K-5, back in FY11, it was 409, and it's up to over almost 550 right now, so it has grown up, and part of that is to build the middle school program, is having the 4 strands to sit there and have enough students in there for that middle school program.
Right. So you're maintaining students in the elementary
Yes,
grades
we're actually
as
getting
well?
more than we have in the past. All our grade levels are full, except for first grade and third grade. K, 2, and 4, and 5 are completely full. We can't bring anyone.
So the word's out. It's an amazing program, and I'm really proud that this district has something that's bilingual. I mean, we're so behind the rest of the world, thinking that everybody should speak our language.
And just an anecdote from BPAC too, that we had some Arabic-speaking parents who asked if their children could pass the English test and they wanted to pick up a third language, would we be open? And we said, sure. That'd be awesome. So the word's getting out in multiple communities.
Okay. This will come for a vote to the board on our next board meeting on the 28th of November. Thank you. I don't see Dr. Wolf. Is he here? Oh, Heidi's going to do this. Okay, all right. Mrs. Detman is going to present our next 3 items. Professional development and a contract.
I'll try to present them in order.
Okay.
So correct me when I go
Okay.
astray. Okay, so first we have professional development with Angela Scordato. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Scordato has provided services for us in the past, and her focus is on arts integration and providing professional development for teachers and classroom activities as well. She's part of our arts integration grant. The next item, I believe, is Bash the Trash with Mr. Bertles.
Yes.
Okay. Similar, he will be providing consulting services for the arts integration model up to 6 days. The next one on the list, Mr. Scrivano?
Is Mr. Crow.
Mr. Crow.
Right.
Mr. Crow is a former teacher with our district.
Retired.
Correct. He has retired, and so he will be coming back again to do professional development with teachers and integrating arts into core content.
Okay. Any questions for Ms. Stetman? If not, these will be presented at our November 28th board meeting for a vote.
Thank you very much.
All righty. Mr. Schmidt, you are next with the eminent domain on Union Street.
Yes, this eminent domain, actually, the board approved the contract for the sale, but there were some problems with the sale. So our outside legal counsel recommend that we proceed on eminent domain with this one to clear up some litigation issues and some liens and things that on this property. With this eminent domain, this is the one of the three remaining pieces of property that we have not acquired.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Schmidt? If not, our next, and I think last item, is Mr. Bailing on the West Middle School Mechanical and Electrical Engineering Services.
So, good evening. As Mr. Connor mentioned, we presented this last week and received the recommendation of the Operations Committee. This is actually two projects. One is the heating and ventilating terminal units, so things like cabinet unit heaters, unit ventilators, which is part of the deferred maintenance program, which is that separate 16 million beyond the 250 million. And then we also have, as he mentioned, the domestic water piping. Had a number of leaks at that building, some of which have been rather disruptive to some classrooms. It appears as though most of the bad leaks have been above the second floor in the central part of the building, so that would be the part we would attack first. We think it might take as many as 3 summers to redo the entire building. It's my sincere hope that we'll be able to limit the scope down from the worst case scenario that was presented in the Larson and Darby study. So this is Larson and Darby, who's done a number of projects for us in the past. Their proposed fee is 6.25% plus reimbursable expenses, things like duplication of blueprints and specifications. So, and east and west, although they have a similar floor plan, they are two wholly separate buildings as far as the mechanical systems go. East, for example, has a central fan unit for the building, whereas west doesn't have that. So it's really difficult to make some side-by-side comparisons to know why one's doing something that the other one isn't doing. And before I was here, correct me if I'm wrong, Todd, I believe that we did some attic domestic water replacements at East, so we've already done some similar work at East in the past, so it's just on a slightly different time frame, I guess. Yeah, and some at West as well in the attic. So.
Questions for Mr. Bailing? I guess I have the cost of this piping thing is very disturbing. I'm not sure where the funds are going to come from for that, but yes, we'll have to figure it out if we have to. But could you explain again why, what happens to the architect fees on a proposal that we don't act on?
Yes, so in the contract, I believe it's approximately 35% of their fee is earned for the schematic design phase. Another 40% is earned for the actual construction documents. A further 5% is earned when the project goes out to bid, and then the remaining 20% is earned during the course of construction, checking the submittals, inspecting the work, providing the punch list and inspection thereof, things of that nature. So, of the total fee of $237,000, I believe it is, at least it's what is estimated at this time. A significant portion of that, if we decide we don't have to do the whole building, if we design it but bid it and decide not to do parts of it, would be saved in the proportion that I mentioned.
Mr. Escobedo.
Yeah, so this was a retained service, is what it says?
This is under the Professional Services Selection Act. This is being designated to Larson and Darby under a satisfactory existing relationship. So we did not do an RFQ or request for qualifications for this one.
Which is how we normally do it.
The majority of
Right.
work, yes.
Yep.
And then, I guess the only other thing was, just out of curiosity, there was some language handwritten about reimbursable costs. Is that well-written in the?
It's defined in the contract
Okay.
what
That's all.
qualifies. It's reimbursables, yes.
Okay.
All right,
Any
thank
other
you.
questions? Thank you. Any other business for tonight? If not, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Anybody?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Siegel. Second by Mr. Connor. I was in shock there. No one said. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. The administrators all said aye. Okay. We are adjourned at 8:06.